So we started by just simply creating a front cover, making it our own. So they had their own reading journals, they did their own covers, and then we did our class reading journal as well, just making it a creative, fun experience, really engaged them into using their reading journals, and because they had put the effort in on their front pages, they were really then that ownership of them as well. So they really took care of their reading journals. 3 terms down and we haven't lost a reading journal. So yeah, you know, they really do care about them. We moved into writing an about us, so really making it personal again. The students did it about themselves, and then in our class one, we wrote everybody's names in and they just wrote a little bit about what they like to do.
So the class reading journal is really helping to build that culture of reading. Within the class.
Definitely,
yes.
Yep. And yeah, really bringing it out, and even kids that don't enjoy reading or didn't enjoy reading are really now enjoying reading because they can have access to that in multiple ways. Could you please do a visualisation today? Whatever comes to your mind while I'm reading, okay? Yeah. Everybody's can look different, everybody's can be different. You might be drawing something that you had already heard, but then when I'm reading it reminds you of something earlier in the book, okay? We looked at genres, book types, things like that we really enjoyed to read, so that way that could then help us build up our class library as well. So we did a bit of a reflection on what we like to read that then could be reflected into our class library quite nicely.
Actually, just thinking about your classroom library, you've really, each term, you're quite mindful of the things that create a classroom collection. You know, you like to refresh it.
Yes, yeah,
each
keep it fresh.
Term. And so when you had the fantasy, when you're reading Spiderwick, you brought in
fantasy novels and books,
a whole collection of fantasy and had a fantasy display.
Yep.
And did you find that raised awareness of the genre outside of just the read aloud?
Yeah, no, it definitely did, yeah. And I found that even whilst I was reading Spiderwick, a lot of the kids in their independent reading were choosing to read fantasy novels as well, because it was like they were completely immersed in the genre, from the read aloud through to their independent reading through to what they saw in the classroom. So it really brought fantasy to life in the classroom. Yeah.
And you are doing a bit of that too, that linking the genre that you're reading often precedes then the genre that you're writing.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Then making those links. And then they're using the vocabulary they're hearing from their reading. They're using the writing techniques, the writing techniques that they hear from their reading in their own personal writing as well. Yeah. She's pretending to be like Via. She's pretending she is Via. Because she might be jealous.
Via.
She might be jealous of Via. That's a really, really good prediction, girls. Let's keep reading. Yes, because we found a lot of the kids did read like your Terry Denton, Andrew Griffith, all those sorts of storybook, the tree story books. So that was then a focus to ensure that we had something like that in the classroom for those students. Anne Doe was a big author that kids enjoyed reading, so we made sure we had his books accessible at all times. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we're keeping track of what we're reading this term as well, or this year I should say, sorry. So we haven't updated it in a little bit, but we read Danny the Champion of the World, moving into the 2 Spiderwick books, even just looking at books or stories that we had read in other learning areas. So the Eureka Stockade by Alan Boardman there, we had actually read that in Haas, and then one of the kids was saying, oh, well, there's another book that we've read, so we added it to our list. And of course since then we've read many more, but just haven't been updated in the class journal.
Which is the thrill of it really, isn't it? You know, the expanse of all that's been read.
Yeah.
Even though it's not cool, it's just that raising that
That's
awareness
it.
of it.
And then looking back at the end of the year, having a whole page full of stuff that we've read. Wow, look at what we've done. How amazing, we've read all of this in 1 year. So, yeah. Then we moved into Spiderwick and we really focused in on predicting in the fantasy Spiderwick novel, and all the different ways that we could predict. And during this time, this is when we were using a tally chart as well.
Yes.
So kids were able to reflect on what strategies they used to predict, and then they were able to keep track of when they were using what strategy in their own writing as well as in our read aloud. and we sort of documented how we did that. So we will predict by looking at the front cover, we can see 3 kids, this is what we predict. And of course then we wrote all our predictions down as we read many times.
So, so they're really getting to hear and see what it looks like and sounds like to make predictions, and that all predictions are good predictions.
Yep, that's right, yeah.
And that those, as you're reading along, then of course that, you know, then they can be, oh, yes, that prediction came true, or...
Yeah, we brought in the kids' creativity as well, because this class I have this year, they're very creative. So allowing them to make predictions through visualising as well, which led us to the treasure chest. What was in the treasure chest, instead of just saying our predictions, draw them. Visualise what do you see in the treasure chest. Many kids, you know, they drew books or drew the fairies, because the book had made mention of the fairies, or clothes and things like that. And then when we read further, quite a few of them actually had made the prediction that there would be a book in the treasure chest without ever seeing the film, without ever reading the books before. They did follow that prediction through and come to, and they did get it right, you know, got a right prediction. So we got them drawing those ones in as well. Might tell her parents. Do you think that Via's gonna forgive Miranda? Or do you think Via's gonna...
Yes.
You think she will? We don't sound very confident though, do we? We're not sure. We'll just have to keep reading to find out, won't we?
Yes.
Yep.
She might, because Miranda was nice to Via
Yeah.
on the last bit.
Yeah.
A celebration of what they're engaging in.
Yeah.
To have this as that class collection of these, you know, people being able to see what others are doing without it just being all in their own books, although their own books are highly prized.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And then giving kids the opportunity to share that and talk with one another after they have finished, but then putting it into here so they can always go back to that and remember that whenever they need to. Yeah.
And great examples for next year.
Exactly.
The year after,
That's
for
right.
others to see.
Holding on to it, my little treasure now. Yeah. Yeah, no, we did lots of predicting. I think the biggest thing that really helped us was the interesting words, because then we could make connections across to our spelling as well. So things that they found in their stories, in Spiderwick, we only put Spiderwick into here, but in their own personal reading journals they have lists of interesting words that they've just come across. Some of them I think have defined words as well, so unknown words that they're not sure if they've put a little definition in, so that down the track if they want to spice up their writing, they can go back to their reading journal, look through and find those interesting words to use in their own writing as well.
Do you feel that that's transferring to their writing?
Definitely in their quick writes. I feel like when there's not constraints on them, they're so much more creative. When we did our narrative, it was quite tricky at first to try and pull that descriptive language out of them, the fantasy language. But looking back now, I think it's because they had so many constraints on them about thinking of a story and then got to get it done in so short a period of time, or those sorts of things. So I think looking to the future next time, it's allowing them to do maybe a quick write to give them those ideas and then to go from there. And this will definitely transfer. And then, now into Wonder, where we're continuing our predictions. A lot of visualisation, and the kids are just itching to see the movie as well, because the idea of being able to transfer from what we've read to how it's produced in film, why is it different? Is the language different? Making those connections and comparisons between two different media texts, And
are you finding their discussion of text as you've gone on through the year? Do you find their discussion changing?
Yeah, even point of referencing as well. So quite often, I'm a movie buff, so I'll reference movies, but as we've read a little bit more, they're starting to reference what we're reading rather than what we've seen on film. So they've brought up Spiderwick this term quite a bit about the similarities and differences. even their own personal books, because a lot of the kids are starting to show a lot more independence in reading and engagement in reading, so they're able to reference their own reading because they are doing more of it, and seeing kids who haven't completed books all year now reading a whole novel and remembering what's been read and then being able to reference what they read is sort of, it's a complete transformation of some of these students from completely disengaging with text to now wanting to finish a book before they start another. It's just insane. It's amazing. Sort of after Stan released Wonder, all the kids jumped on and started watching it, which sort of took a little bit from their engagement within the text. So they started not really listening, or I could see as I was reading that they weren't engaged. And I sort of thought, do I drop the book? We're so close to the end of the term, I might as well just drop the book and say, you know, we didn't finish it, whatever's, move on kind of thing. But persisting with it has managed, and that's been has allowed me to really hook them back into the book. Although a lot of them now have seen the film, and we've put that out there that, you know, when we finish the book, we can watch the film as a class together and then talk about it. And that's hooked them back in. They really want to finish the book now. We had the discussion about, you know, I want you guys to pick up a book and read it to the end, and then I need to model that myself. I can't be reading a book and then see that the kids aren't engaging in it and just go, oh, well, I'll give up, because I don't want them to be doing that. So, yeah, picking that book up and pushing through it, within a couple of chapters, they were back into it. They wanted to keep reading, and now it's sort of like we're reading from the start of the day to nearly recess, and then they're wanting more after recess, and it's almost like I have to say, you know, that's enough reading for today, my voice is going. But yeah, like they have picked back up with the book and engaged completely with it again.
I could absolutely hear that.
Yeah, that's it. So it's daily that we're doing something in the book. It could be from just a dot point about what they've read or what they've heard while being read to doing full page visualizations, summaries, making connections with the text as well. That's a big one, which was actually a student-driven strategy, because I'd noticed the student had started linking stuff that happened in her life with what she was reading. And so the next week we moved on from our previous reading strategy and looked at how can we make connections with the text to better our understanding of it. And the kids took to that really well, so we started doing that in our reading journal as well. Things like Book Week, when we have stuff on, it will go in the reading journal. Personal readers go in the reading journal, so that then it just becomes a collection, like you said, celebrating reading and everything that goes with it. Mostly from the read alouds, but there is still elements from their own reading. So for students that have finished their texts, I like them to write a summary in their reading journal, because then it's nice to go back and look at what they have read in the past. But mostly is from the read aloud. But yeah, it's their own book as well. So if they feel that they have a connection to something that they really want in the journal, then it's put into the journal. Yeah. And then with the read alouds, allowing that access for those kids who might not have those literacy skills to be able to read them, it being read to them, they've got access to a whole new world, and then putting that into their reading journals almost sort of solidifies it in a way. You know, like, it's one thing to be read to and sort of just sit there and listen, but the reading journals really allow them to take it in and digest it and make those connections and work through the stories that they've heard or have read. Yeah. Good question. I guess for the future, like for this term, the rest of this year, using the reading journals with poetry is our next step, and making that collection of poetry in their reading journals, which I don't realise they've already started with Hist and Sign of the Seahorse. But yeah, building up that bank of stuff within that and continuing exploring reading, like having, as they grow and become more independent readers, I guess then really using the reading journal as their own for their independent reading rather than as much for a read aloud. So right now it's sort of all about the read aloud, reflecting on that, but the reading journal I'd like to see morph into more for their independent reading in the future, that it becomes a tool for them to use as they read.
And at the end of the year, what do you see? The reading journal, do they take that home?
Oh,
At the
definitely.
end of the year?
Or take it up with them to the next year. Yeah, yeah. If there's room, I think some of them could be pretty close to maybe finishing it off, only a couple of pages left, but if they could take it up with them for the next year, it'd definitely be worth holding on to. If not, they are definitely taking them home. I'm not throwing one of them out, and if they don't want them, I mean, would keep them as a treasure for the next year for the kids coming up, to be able to see what we use them for, why we use them, and how they can be used, as one example. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just looking through them, like even some of the drawings, kids have only done stick figures, but it's so detailed at the same time. Like it is only just stick figures, but it's so detailed to the text. And then watching them today, going back through and seeing a small visualization that's done with stick figures, but they know exactly what happened in that story. They can, because they're looking at that visualization, they're hearing the words in their head. It's like visualization in reverse almost, sort of thing. Yeah.